So first, I want to say thank you to all of you. It's hard enough to give a speech. I think it's even more difficult to open yourself up as a person and share a piece of you with the community. So I'm just thank you both. Thank you all so much. For the first topic, I wanted to piggyback on Sally and her opening plenary and talk a little bit more about the power of proximity. And any of you feel free to jump in, but I'll direct questions, then feel free to, if you have ads or a different perspective. But my first question actually is for Bvudzai, because I feel like for Village Reach, being proximate and closing the distance is like a core part of your mission and your organization. So would you mind just talking a little bit about how you view proximity and how you bring it into your work?
Yeah, great question. Am I on? Thanks, Erin. You're very right. Being proximate is very much a part, of our core mission, because we are trying to reach out to the people who would otherwise miss out on healthcare. And there are a couple of ways in which we do this. One of the things that comes to mind immediately is how we partner with government and other stakeholders on the ground to really try to identify the issues, the barriers to accessing healthcare, and then come up with a solution that is really inclusive of many stakeholders who are working on the ground. For us, the government is a very important stakeholder because we recognize that the government will probably be there for a very long time. So we do our work with a view to ultimately transition and hand over what we do to the government, because they do have the mechanisms in place to connect with the communities. That is one thing. A second thing that comes to mind actually is how we are working towards using technology to keep that proximity. We are very interested to know what's happening in the communities where we are working, and we have some solutions that we use to capture information. And our teams currently are working very hard to ensure that that data, what we call visual analytics, that it's really available so that people, in some sense, even when they are not right in the field, on the ground, they can continue to be proximate in some sense, if I can use that word, and know what is happening in the community. So those are some of the issues that come to mind immediately.
You know, I was thinking last night during the opening plenary too, they talked about how men need to be involved in women's rights and women's equality. And I mean, it's the first thing that popped in my mind was actually Alpha, because I mean, he's actually a man working exclusively on a woman's issue. I wanted to like hold his hand and go, right here, we have someone case in point. So Alpha, I was hoping if you'd be willing to share with them and just your thoughts around how men can be more proximate to women's issues, or what about, you make it seem like no die would do that, but this is obviously something that doesn't happen enough. So just any of your thoughts around that?
I think for me it is very important that, like the last statement I say, that even if an issue doesn't affect you directly, or is something that you are not concerned about, but caring for those things actually enables progress to happen. My view basically on this issue is that, for example, as someone who comes from Zimbabwe, it is culturally a taboo to talk about menstrual periods, and later on go and buy pads or go and buy feminine hygiene products. But if you look at it, I have a young sister, and I'll also have probably a son or a daughter in future, or even my brother will have a daughter in future. Literally, at one point, that conversation is going to happen. And I feel like the reason why most problems are so hard to solve today is because people turn a blind eye towards them. They say culturally, it's wrong to talk about this. But even if you talk about it, nothing changes. I have been doing it for a long time. And with some of the people saying, some of the negative things. But one thing I always tell them that even though what you think I'm saying is a taboo, what if your daughter approaches you and asks and begins to have a conversation about that topic? Are you going to throw them away? Are you going to need to marry someone else in order for them to talk to your daughter about something like that? So it's very important that if you start now to be engaged in the issues like that, it makes your world even much more better. You know, you begin to understand the reason why the issues of sexual assault are important. You know, you begin to start caring and understanding about those issues even more. So to me, I always say, even if something does not affect you directly, even if I do not use feminine hygienic products, it doesn't mean that if someone is using them, I must not care about them. You're supposed to care about the things that do not concern you. So thank you.
I love that. And, you know, when I think of caring about things and issues, you know, a large part of why this program exists is through the foil and the power of storytelling and being able to close that gap and being able to articulate and create empathy from a distance. And I have a question for Angela, because you're a filmmaker, you're a storyteller yourself, and your parents are. And whether it's you or your parents or your family's approach to filmmaking, does proximity or reaching the audience come in mind at all? And if so, how?
Well, I think I'm really proud of my parents. Their names are Alan and Mary Code. And I really look up to them because they've told many stories that wouldn't have been told if they didn't tell them. And so one film that they made in particular that I really hold dear to me is it's called Nuhonie, and it means our story. And they talk about the history of our people, of the Saïd Dene. And it's a tough story to tell, but it was the reality for my people. And it's still a story that many people don't know. And with the power of telling stories, of telling your own story, and to do it through film or through whatever medium, it's reaching out past your community. It's perhaps touching somebody that is outside of your circle, and that creates change, and for the better, I think. And I think that it's a really powerful thing to be able to know who you are and where you come from, and to be able to tell your own story in a good way. Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'd even say more than just the film, just you being at the forum. I don't know how many people have come up to you already saying, I didn't know, thank you for being here, thank you for sharing your story. It's just, you'd be surprised what one person in one conference can really do. So thank you so much. Antonia, I actually had a question. You know, what's interesting about Fundación Capital to me is that when I think of finance, I don't necessarily think of proximity. I don't know why. The two things don't necessarily click in my mind. But in a way that is kind of what they do, because it's building proximity or bridging the gap at like the access to capital, because not everyone has that. So would you mind just talking about the proximity gap when it comes to capital and like what your organization does around that?
Okay, yeah, finance is not an easy issue. Okay, if you think in your lives, in you day by day, you need capital for everything. I mean, it's to access to good, to let your kids go to school in some countries, and I don't know, it's something really important in our lives, and sometimes we put a stigma on that, right? But in low-income families, what we found is that they're not asking for money, right? They are asking for opportunities to have access to information so they can manage better the money that they have. I always say this because in most of the programs, mostly on the financial inclusion programs, what happens is that the government of the social sector just create a program and deliver the program to the person and just knock the door and say, hey, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this. So I think that that is the wrong way, because the people say, hey, I know how to save. Probably if we compare the amount that you save and the amount that I save, probably I am able to save more than you, and you're not a good saver. So that's why I think it's really important to be really close to the population and don't think that we know the answer to their questions. No, what we need to do is sit down with them and understand which are the problems that they're facing and let them know how to solve them. And I think in terms of finance, it happens the same. When you have a financial advisor, probably is that what a financial advisor do. Even a psychologist do that for you. So I think that's really when we are able to be close to them. But it's really hard to do that in person. I mean, it's something that is really, the cost is really high. So we are not able to do that with all the people around the world, with all the low-income population around the world. And that's why we use the technology, because we think that there is something that is already inside in our hands. And the uses that we use the technology for many things, but they use the technology for taking more informed decisions. And I think that it's very important in terms of finance.
Cool. I want to shift gears a little bit, and I wanted to cover a different topic because we are the emerging leaders. So I kind of wanted to touch base on the role with youth in shaping and being leaders in our future. And this first question is for Alpha and/or Angela. Take your pick. Because, you know, leading as somebody who founded your own company and someone who's already a filmmaker, you're thrust into leadership roles at a very young age. And just from your perspective, have you come across any problems or stigmas or any maybe not taken as credible as older people?
You can go first.
Okay, thank you. Problems. Yeah, I've met a lot of problems, especially because my definition of leadership is a little bit different. To me, being a leader doesn't mean I'm supposed to be, 8 years old. Yes, I know with age comes wisdom, but sometimes I might be just 20 and be wisdom enough and learning. Because, for me, if you want to be wise, you need to associate with mainly people that are associated with wisdom. So you spend most of your time learning from the older people on how they were doing things. So in most cases, I had to, learn about the different things. Like, if there is a problem, you do not just think you're the one who has a solution to it. It's very important to sit down and listen. Listen to the view of the person who is really basically talking about the problem and understand where they are coming from. And if you have your view and you are part of a team and you are a very good leader, it is very important that you have the last say. Why am I saying that? You need to sit down and first listen to what the others are saying. And through those ideas, it can make your idea even better. So to me, I always try to separate what I do with basically separate my leadership in terms of going to school, because I'm a student myself, and also being a leader in the nonprofit. So in the nonprofit, I'm wearing another different hat that is a little bit unfriendly, but also with the view that says that because even though I'm a college student, right, the experience that I've faced so much in life, growing up without anyone to look up to, failing 100 times, doing the work 10 times more than what a normal person doing, it taught me a lot of things. It made me to understand that everyone out there is a relative to me. Everyone out there is a parent to me. So to me, I didn't really, yes, it's an emotional thing that I, grew up without all those fundamental figures, but one amazing thing I learned from it is I opened up to so many people and allowed to learn from so many different people. And that, in case, actually made me a far much better person. And I remember at one time when I was going to buy bread at one of the shops growing up, I was so happy because I hadn't ate the day before. So I bought just a loaf. And when I was going out the shop, there was this older man. He was lying on the floor. And then I stopped by him saying, "Are you all right?" He said, I'm traveling to Botswana, and I need someone to take me to the place where we grab the buses to. So I went out. I walked with him, and then even offered him. And then I actually gave him the bread that I had deep down I was saying, you know, I really needed the bread, but at that particular moment I saw someone who probably needed it more than I did. So I gave him the bread and we kept him going. So before he boarded, he told me one thing. He said, young man, the fact that you were able to stop for me and take me here, this is something I don't see in so many people. Please do not change whoever you are. Always be someone who listens. So to me, my leadership is mainly about listening rather than about talking, because through that, I am sure I'm able to achieve a lot. Thank you.
Angela?
Okay, so like I said, I come from a very small community, Tuduli Lake, and the education is not great there. And so I was fortunate that my parents were able to move us kids to Whitehorse so that I could finish high school and be on par with the rest of Canada. You know, when I graduated from high school in Whitehorse, I had like 24 family members from my reserve take the bus all the way to another territory to see me graduate from high school. It was a big deal. And yeah, it's not a big deal to many people in Canada. It's pretty predictable to graduate from high school. It's common, but it's not for Indigenous people. There's a very high high school dropout rate, and there's very few people who actually go on to post-secondary education. And I went to post-secondary. I went to UBC in Vancouver. And that had a lot of challenges for me because here I was at a white Western academic institution. And my major was in First Nation Studies and my minor was in First Nation Languages and Linguistics. And it was a great program, but I was a minority in that school. And there were times where I didn't want to be there. I wanted to drop out because I think a lot of Indigenous students have this feeling like you're kind of torn and you're pushed by people saying like, go to school, get your education, get a good job. But you're also told, learn your language, learn your culture, spend time with your elders, be out on the land. And so you're kind of in these two worlds. And while I was at university, within the first couple of years, I lost a few family members that were very dear to me. And one of them was my late Uncle Isaac. And he was like a second father to me. He taught me a lot about hunting and being out in the bush and about resilience because he went through a really tough life. He went through all kinds of abuses at Indian residential school, but yet he was so funny. He was hilarious. And, you know, that just showed to me an incredible strength and something that I hope to carry with my life, throughout my life. And but the thing was, when he died, I left school for a while, and I just wanted to be back home and spend time with my family, and to learn from my people the things that I would never learn in a Western academic institution. And so one of the challenges, I think, in being a young Indigenous person in this day and age is to be able to walk in these two worlds, because it is very different ideologies, worldviews, and values. And you know, there's a Dogrib woman, Chinchon woman from Northwest Territories who said it so eloquently, saying that one of the biggest challenges for Indigenous youth today is that you have to be strong like two people. And that can be quite burdensome sometimes because, yeah, you need all kinds of different skills to be successful in this day and age. And so, yeah, that's one of the challenges, I guess.
Yeah, thank you. I have a question too for Bvudzai and Antonia, because I think where Alpha and Angela are more entrepreneur, Bvudzai and Antonia are both intrapreneurs working within a big NGO. And I just have a general question as somebody or to two people who are entrepreneurs. How do you lead from within a big organization, and how do you get that kind of change?
Okay, I'll go first. Thanks. I think for me, leading within an organization is very much about relationships with people. We work, you know, our teams are very diverse, and so, but I think our values in terms of what we're trying to achieve are the same. And so for me, it's been trying to navigate how best to cultivate what I think are sort of the soft issues, because the hard issues we all have, or the technical skills, we all have our different technical skills, but it's often those soft issues in terms of how we relate with each other and how we communicate and how we build trust, things that are sort of not written in ink, but are very important in terms of how we lead others. Yeah.
Okay, so please don't say this to my boss, but I am I am always really happy because I am learning with others' money, right? So that's it. That's a huge opportunity if you want to be an entrepreneur. So being an entrepreneur inside Fundación Capital let me understand that there is a social sector, right? That is in charge to deliver those goods and services that the private sector is not able to do, right? Why? Because it's not a good business. So working in Fundación Capital and being an NGO, we are trying, and that's part of my job inside Fundación Capital, we are trying to transform an NGO into a social enterprise. So we are trying to understand how to transform social programs into social sustainable programs, how we can do so. So it was an amazing experience to have that opportunity. And I think that we as the social sector, we really should try to understand how we can have a sustainable business model in the work that we do. Because it's a really good example, and I would like to take the story that Angela was telling. It's like when you have the fishes of the caribou. If you don't find a way to do that sustainable, then the fishes are going to be gone one day, or the caribou, and you are going to be able to eat more. So I think that same happen with international cooperation, and we need to understand how to make this sector something sustainable. And again, technology, in my opinion, it's a highway to do it.
Cool. I definitely want to get to Q&A from the audience. One last question for all four of you in one sentence. I'm serious, one sentence. Just as a takeaway for everyone in the room, if you want them to leave with one thing to know about you, your work, just anything, this is your chance. One sentence, though. Take a moment. Go 1, 2. Maybe I'll start with Angela. Antonia seems very concentrated. You got it? Okay. One sentence. Go.
Problem, solution, business model.
Alpha.
Worry about things that do not concern you sometimes.
Bvudzai.
I think for me, I would say let's work collectively.
I would say learn, educate yourself, and have empathy.
Great. Thank you all so much. And with, oh, yeah. So we have a few minutes left. So I don't know if there's any questions from the audience, but at this time, please, it doesn't have to be questions. It can be things that resonated or things that interest you, anything that you're curious about. But if there are any questions, raise your hand. Oh, let's see one. Oh, do they need one of them?
Hi, my name is Ria. I'm about to be starting college in the fall, so my question is probably directed more towards Alpha. I'm just curious, as someone else who has aspirations to create change, not only on my small communal level, but my bigger community. So I'm wondering how you find balance and how you manage the work that you're doing as an entrepreneur with your education, with academics?
I think it's possible, even though it's sometimes challenging. But as an entrepreneur, you always have a network of friends. And also, through having the network of friends, when you create the project that you're working on, you realize that you need to create a strong team. And you are not supposed to, like, if something happens to you, it's not supposed to happen to the organization. And having that separation actually helps. Right now, I am here away from school and away from my organizations. Even though I'm doing many projects, like many phone calls and other press releases online, but then my team back there is actually working very well. So you need to have that team that you trust, that team that you train and understand yourself that there is a demarcation between you and your education. And my honest truth is, it is very important to always educate yourself as a leader. Read more, go do the masters, go to the PhD, because when you get up there, you even meet different people, and then and at the same time do something that you're passionate about. I'll say it's very possible. You can do it.
Sorry.
Okay, so my name is Noura. Thank you for the interventions. I think what I really liked about the stories that you shared was that some of them were actually lived experiences. You actually lived through some of the issues that you're working on. In the case of Alpha, it's proximate lived experience, so that was really nice. My question is, from your proximity, and you all do your work very collaboratively, was there a situation where you expected some way that your collaborators or others would act, think, do, and you were caught by surprise, positively or negatively?
So at one time, there was another businessman that that was interested in what I was doing. And then we had a meeting, and we were really connecting at a different level. But then one thing that he said that actually, I felt uncomfortable with was he said that, you know what, you are very good at, I like the way you talk. I'll give this much money to your organization, but I want you to start appearing in the adverts that I want to be doing, and using your unique story and your unique the organization that you're working with. To me, one thing that I told him, I was like, you cannot make me a marketing thing, and at the same time, I cannot start marketing. I cannot start using Strong Women, Strong Love as something that I'm marketing. These are people that are affected by this. You see, so one thing that I say that sometimes money is involved, but as a leader, you don't need to be taken away by the money. You need to know the core thing, the core reason why you're doing this. So that's how I was able to, say, if the deal is for you to donate and then I will use the money, I would agree. But if you want me to start exploiting what I'm doing for the benefit of your company in relation to the passion that I'm doing, then I said in that case, no.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Raj Siraj. I'm from Toronto, Canada, traditional territories of the Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee. My question is for Angela. So a few friends and I got together last year, and we started a project where we take over soon-to-be-demolished properties. We started with commercial property in Toronto. Toronto's a sort of a city that's evolving very fast, gentrified quite rapidly. Whole neighborhoods are being transformed within a few years. People are being displaced, businesses are being closed down. So we took over commercial properties and converted them to immersive art experiences. And now we're moving to residential spaces, so homes that have been bought but will be demolished in 3 weeks. So we invite the artistic community, we convert the entire space into immersive experience. Through art, we ask the important questions of urbanization, gentrification, displacement, who belongs where. And the idea is after 3 weeks, the homes are gone. So it's a very transient, but hopefully a very embedded experience for people. We've had some difficulties engaging the indigenous communities. And of course, there's a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. And there's a lot of education that we have to take upon ourselves so we're not passing the burden on to the indigenous peoples. As an artist yourself, how would you want to be engaged in building a new fabric or a new story, a historical story, but from a new narrative about a city?
Well, Canada is a very big country, and I haven't spent a lot of time in cities, to be honest, but I do know about displacement, and I do know about land dispossession, and like our people, the Saïd Dene, went through one of the worst government forced relocations in Canadian history, and I know how much that move has affected our people in a very negative way. And so I can kind of understand the sentiment of the people who are displaced from their homes in the cities. And I think for the art project that you're doing, I think essentially you're asking me how would you engage more Indigenous people to participate. Yeah, I guess in just getting to know them, like hearing their stories about displacement or relocation, and trying to find out like what those sentiments are, what those feelings are, and what that looks like for them. And I don't know, like it's a really tough question for you to ask, because you know, like I said, Canada is such a large country, and Indigenous peoples are so diverse. And you know, like the peoples who inhabit Toronto and the people who are from there, like the Indigenous peoples, like you gotta seek them out and listen to their stories and build that trust to participate and to take up that space. And I don't know, that's all I can say.
We have time for 2 more questions, I think you. And did you have a question? Yeah.
Hi everyone, I'm Vandré Brilhante from Brazil, and I have a question for you all. If we were to start a youth initiative program in your own communities, how would you do it? Any specific point to highlight? If you were to start a youth initiative program on your communities, how would you do it? What would you care more about?
Okay, I would like to answer that question. There is a super good methodology, human-centered design, and I love that methodology because when you use it, and also I think it answers a little bit of his question, you are able to listen to people that it's involved in the problem. So if you are able to understand which is the problem or which are the problems that a community is facing, and you highlight those problems, and then you facilitate a conversation around how to find solutions, but solutions from them and for them, right? Then you're going to be able to build or to test one of those solutions. So I think that that's the best approach you can take, because in the old model, we used to create the solutions in our places, we say in the table in the big cities, and then deliver those to them. And I think that is a huge mistake.
One last question.
Okay, my name's Rick Spence. I'm a journalist from Toronto. Wondering if you guys who are here sort of representing the new leaders, the emerging leaders, the future, if you could ask the social entrepreneur community, you know, to do one thing differently or to do something special to help you guys get more traction in your careers and your projects and programs, what would you ask for?
I think for me as an emerging leader, I would say that there are other leaders who've already emerged. So we need spaces of intergenerational leadership where we can share experiences and we can also learn from others who have led in these spaces or even different spaces before. So having those forums for sort of sharing experiences for me is something that will be critical.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment. I have this document here that my organization, Our Voices, put together along with Dana Nawo, based in Northwest Territories, and Kanak from Nunavut. And it's called We Are One Mind, Perspectives from Emerging Indigenous Leaders on the Arctic Policy Framework. And what this document is about, essentially, here are our voices about what should happen in the North and like for us. And so I think that one of the messages is like nothing for us without us. You know, consultation is a very big part, communication and understanding. And so these are things that we see necessary as Northerners. And so often it's people in Ottawa or you know, other major parts of Canada in the South that make decisions on the North for us without any real conversation. And so I think that that's the key thing is just the engagement and to actually listen, you know, and I think that's a common theme today is just like listen to the people and yeah, see what their needs are and facilitate them in their empowerment. Like don't do it for anybody, just do it with them, you know?
Antonia wants to say something, just real quick, because we're almost out of time.
Yeah. I will, answering to your questions, to your question, I would say that regulation is not friend of innovation. And in the social sector for us, it's really hard to innovate and at the same time go against the regulation. And in my sector, which is fintech, that is something really relevant.
Thank you all so much for coming. One last thing before you leave, if you could fill out your evaluation forms on your table with any questions or comments, I'd greatly appreciate it. Other than that, thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your forum.